Monte Cristo Homestead is located in the town of Junee, New South Wales, Australia, and was built by local pioneer Christopher William Crawley in 1885. The building is a double-storey Victorian structure that stands on a hill and overlooks the town. The Crawley family lived in the homestead until 1952, where everything in the house was sold until the property was completely empty. What remained of the property fell prey to dealers who stripped it bare, and it was eventually vandalised, leaving it severely damaged, and remained a vacant derelict structure until June 1963, when it was purchased by Reg and Olive Ryan for £1,000, and they moved in with 3 young daughters, with another on the way. The building needed a lot of work to bring it back to its original state, and they immediately set about working to restore it. They'd only been in the house but 3 days when strange events started to happen. One evening, they were on their way home from town after purchasing some supplies. As they were approaching the long driveway, they could see lights streaming out of the homestead. They were totally shocked and had to stop the car and just stare at the brilliant illumination coming from their house. Initially, Olive was reticent about going any further, but Reg was keen to investigate and drove on up to the house, where the lights immediately went out. After seeing the house lit up, they started to ask questions as to what could have caused it. As it was a foggy night, friends suggested they may have seen the reflection of their own headlights hitting the windows and bouncing back at them through the fog, but the couple said there was no glass in any of the windows. To make matters even more frightening, the electricity had not yet been connected, and they had left no lamps burning. So where did the brilliant light come from? The Ryans had known very little about their original owners, and it didn't take long before the spirits decided to make themselves known to the family. They'd recently introduced their cat Blackie to the house and left her to explore her new surroundings. The cat had only gone a few steps when she immediately arched her back and started to go crazy and jumped out of the window. That was the last time they ever saw their cat. Their daughters all shared a room on the 2nd floor, which had no veranda and was high up from the ground. On many occasions, they would complain to their parents that a man's face could be seen staring at them from outside the window, and he must have been floating on air. They said he looked young and always wore his work clothes. It happened so often that they eventually ignored him. Late one night, Olive and one of her daughters were alone in the house, and they both heard the French windows that led up to the balcony open and close, followed by the sound of footsteps going downstairs. About 50 minutes later, they heard footsteps coming back upstairs. At the time of the incident, mother and daughter were in separate rooms, and each assumed it was the other walking down, then up the stairs. When Olive called out to her daughter and then walked to her bedroom, she found she'd been in the bed the whole time and never left the room. The whole family were now hearing footsteps walking around at night after the lights had been turned off. Occasionally, the footsteps appeared to be walking on lino, and on other occasions were walking on wood. What made everything even stranger was that all the floors on the property were carpeted. One evening they were entertaining some guests in the ballroom when one of the parents asked the youngest daughter to check on her younger brother, who was asleep in his room. A short time later, she came back distressed, telling them that as she entered his room, she saw a young man standing, staring down at her brother. She was able to describe the young man in detail, right down to a hole in his sleeve, and she had to be calmed down. One time they had a relative called Peter staying with them, and one evening when he was out, they'd left him a note advising them that they would not be home till late and to make himself a snack in the kitchen. When Peter arrived home to an empty house, he thought it unusual that all the lights were on. As he was in the kitchen preparing a snack, he could hear footsteps coming from the back veranda and the sound of the door opening. Believing that the family had returned home, he then heard someone walk into the kitchen. He then felt a hand on his shoulder, and as he casually turned around expecting to see a family member, to his horror, found there was nobody there. He immediately ran out of the house and did not return for 2 weeks. On his return, he just sat in the car with the engine running while Olive had to pack his belongings, as he was too afraid to enter the house. Olive did not doubt him because on many occasions she also felt an invisible hand on her shoulders. On another occasion, when the family were away in Sydney on business, a young couple were looking after Monte Cristo for them. When the family eventually returned home, the couple said that at around 2 a.m. in the morning they could hear someone playing their piano downstairs. Even though they owned a piano, and the Crawleys had also owned a piano, the room was in darkness at that time. The couple swore that they would never again stay in the house. When the house had been completely restored, they decided to have guided tours. On one occasion, Reg was showing a mother and daughter around the house, and after viewing the ground floor, he then planned to take them upstairs to the second floor. As they were walking up the stairs, Reg noticed that the mother and daughter appeared to be stuck on the landing of the stairwell. When Reg asked them what the problem was, they replied that a strong force was stopping them from going any further. They never made it to the second floor. Another time, a family was on a guided tour, and the mother noticed that a 6-year-old son refused to go into any of the rooms and kept looking over his shoulder. Initially, the mother thought nothing of it, and when the tour ended and the family got into the car and started to drive away, suddenly the car stopped and reversed back up the driveway, and the mother got out and asked the tour guide, Beth, whether any strange things happened at Monte Cristo. Beth replied they had spirits. The mother then explained that as they got into the car, her son was asking who was the old man with the beard and brown suit that had followed them around the house. On many occasions, guides were affected, where on one occasion a new guide had entered the boys' room and suddenly became breathless and would only happen in that particular room. Olive then told her that she had the same problem in the boys' room and even went as far as having her heart tested by the doctor. Some people from the nearby town of Junee had reported seeing a light floating along a balcony when the house was vacant, and had seen it on more than one occasion. On other occasions, some people from town would see the house glowing from the town, knowing that the family were away. One day the couple invited 3 mediums to inspect Monte Cristo, but gave them no information. The 3 mediums stayed for 3 days. The findings were much the same as what the family and visitor had experienced. One medium claimed that the ground floor felt safe, but upstairs in the boys' room they sensed violence and death. They also sensed violence in the dining room. One of them moved to the balcony and was so affected by the sinister atmosphere that she felt the urge to throw herself off the balcony and was fortunately grabbed back to safety. Another medium saw a little old lady dressed in black in one of the bedrooms, and it just so happens that one of the daughters had also seen the old lady on 3 occasions and refused to go into that room. The same medium claimed that an old woman had ordered him out of the house. Another medium sensed that a tragedy had occurred on the staircase. She was later vindicated when an elderly woman from town claimed that her mother had worked at Monte Cristo as a domestic servant from 1907 until 1911, and sometime in that period a nanny had fatally dropped a child down the stairwell. In her defense, the servant claimed that an unseen force had pushed the child out of her arms. Reg Ryan was asked whether he ever felt threatened by some of the negative forces in the house, and he said he didn't in the beginning, but felt safe now. He claimed that he regularly heard footsteps, and a visitor had recently seen the ghost of a young woman on the stairs. But Ryan said that he has never felt he was the actual owner of Monte Cristo, only the guardian.